Hey all, I've been sick with a pretty bad sinus infection and double ear infection, and I sound like this, so I really haven't had the energy to make any videos, but I was feeling a little bit better today and I wanted to make a video about a topic that I get a lot of questions about. This is going to be more of an old school kind of like one big take video, and in this video I'm talking about Smith & Wesson and 3 ideas that I have to fix them. Unless you've been living under a rock, you're probably aware of the quality control issues that Smith & Wesson has had lately, and just the general poor quality compared to how they used to be. Well, I've certainly been victim to it, and I have a few ideas on how to clean up the company and get them back to being a great company. These ideas are mine, but they're formed from experiences with Smith & Wesson products and seeing a lot of information out there on the brand. I've got a background in business, but I'm also not able to look into the inner workings to make these comments in particular. So this is very much the outsider perspective, and these are just my observations and some ideas based on them. I'm not really presenting these 3 ideas in any specific order here either. I think that 2 of them can be rolled out at pretty much the same time though, so I'll cover those 2 ideas first. Let's get right into them. The first idea is very simple. Smith & Wesson needs to trim down their product catalog. They make too many different guns. To make an analogy, I think about restaurants and menu sizes. When I see a restaurant with a giant menu, I know that I've got slim chances with getting a great meal from every single item on the menu. The bigger the range of offerings, the less good each individual one will be. Now there are some exceptions, but I've generally found this to be the case. Well, Smith & Wesson certainly has this issue, and I think they might be one of the most bloated gun companies out there for their product catalog. They really need to refocus and get back to the basics that people want from Smith & Wesson. To me, that means trimming out the long guns and a lot of the niche guns, the performance center guns, and special edition guns. When I and many folks look to Smith & Wesson for a new gun purchase, it's not for a lever action rifle, or a shotgun, or a pistol caliber carbine. Now, in a similar motion but a little bit different, a lot of the good designs that they do make, like a lot of the revolvers and autoloaders, have duplicate versions with slightly different features, but they're another SKU and another gun to have to make. It could be something like a 442 or 642 J-frame, but they have a different SKU that is a lock or a no-lock one. Or they have ones that are different grips that ship with the guns. Or maybe they have different coloring for the inlays on the grips. Or maybe they have a different front sight or maybe a rear sight. It could also be the same gun, but now it's a scandium or full aluminum gun like some of these Airlight guns, or it could be a performance center or special edition of a relatively normal model from Smith & Wesson. Well, in my opinion, Smith & Wesson needs to cut it down. I think that close to 80% of their product catalog could get discontinued, and I really do think it should. Making a leaner catalog would mean that every gun would get a little bit more limelight, which they certainly desperately need at Smith & Wesson right now. This leads right into the next idea. Smith & Wesson moved their main production facility from Massachusetts down to Tennessee a few years back. They still own other facilities in the Northeast, but Tennessee is the new primary location for making guns. Smith & Wesson cited that they moved to Tennessee for better gun rates as a manufacturer, which is partially true. One of the other reasons is that labor costs and general overhead costs are much cheaper in Tennessee than they are in the Northeast. Well, I'm here to say that Smith & Wesson needs to pay those Tennessee workers better, and to give them better and more training. This is a very simple thing. When your employees feel like they are being fairly compensated for their work, they will do better work. If they are happy to come to work, the guns will turn out better. On the flip side, Smith & Wesson needs to train these people well, and to actually let the people who do the quality control, allow them to perform the quality control tasks. Part of quality control is failing components or complete guns that failed to work as intended, or have very, very obvious and bad cosmetic issues. I would love to meet the person who saw this 351C here that's missing half of the logo and said, "Yep, that's fine, send it out the door." I'm fairly sure that Smith & Wesson doesn't want people failing parts or complete guns, otherwise we wouldn't see as many issues as we have over the last, goodness, 20 years, but really since COVID is when it's gotten bad. So the last 5 years, we've seen way more lemons leaving their factories. Well, the quality control is a well-known Smith & Wesson issue, but that also leads to the final idea that I've got here. This final idea of mine will be the hardest one for Smith & Wesson to perform. Smith & Wesson has been pushing the boundaries over the last 15 years with a lot of their autoloading handguns. This might not be something that folks think about, but the original Shield when it launched in the early 2010s was a really impressive gun when it came out. The recent Bodyguard 2.0 is also too, as it's really the smallest locked breech 380 pistol in the market that isn't like an LCP. It does shoot better than most of the guns at size 2, and even with my gripes with the gun, I can still perform very well with it compared to a lot of guns like the LCP 1, 2, Max, a lot of the old pocket rocket blowback guns. And truthfully, the only 380 I shoot better than this is the Glock 42, but that gun feels like cheating. However, with pushing boundaries, it often means sacrificing something in the design to get to your goals. Smith & Wesson has done that, which can work well. However, when making a harder to produce design, you also need to have better quality control processes to make sure that these harder to make guns actually come out competently. To talk more generally about design, Smith & Wesson has a whole lot of guns that are relatively hard to make, and I don't think that they have the capabilities to make these guns very well and very consistently as it currently is. A lot of the issues with the wheel guns are obviously tied to quality control, but that comes back to the design and the forefront qualities. If a design is hard to make with the current ways of producing guns, are they going to take the time to do it right, or are they just going to rush it out? Well, we all know how they do it, and it isn't doing it right. I'm not saying that Smith & Wesson needs to redesign all of their guns. I think that more thought needs to be put into the elements that are always seemingly issues on these guns, though. Maybe don't make the rear sight on the Bodyguard 2.0 so awful to drift, as most people have had complaints about that, and that is a serious thing that has come up. As per the manual that comes with the gun, there ain't no way that you're drifting one of these rear sights with a hammer and a punch. Maybe for the revolvers, they need to realize that the forcing cones on a lot of the guns are far too long, as with every Smith & Wesson revolver I've seen sent back to them, including the ones I sent back, have required trimming down the forcing cones because there was not enough clearance with the cylinder. Maybe they need to redesign the thumb safeties on the Shields and Shield Plus and on the Bodyguard 2.0 and the Shield X, because seemingly every single safety on one of those guns is very stiff, to the point that a lot of folks have snapped off the plastic safety arm from inside the frame. The designs and the issues of the designs are a big problem. I think that some of these certainly do work and can work, but when you mix together all of the elements, there's often a lot of issues that lead to people getting guns that don't work the way that they're intended to work, and it's really a shame. This last idea is one of those ones that's kind of hard to articulate here, but the big thing is that with complex designs or hard to produce designs, you can't cut corners. And when you cut corners, the quality control is often the first thing that gets nixed, and then people get guns that don't work properly. And as consumers, we should expect better from these companies. Well, I've shook my fist at the proverbial cloud in the sky for long enough here. What do you think of the issues over at Smith & Wesson? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching to the end of the video, and massive thanks to my financial supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon. If you'd like to join as a channel member or as a patron, links to both are down in the description. We've also got a community Discord link down there too. Thanks again for watching. I'm gonna go take some Sudafed and lay down now. I'll see you in the next video.